Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're doing something I find absolutely fascinating. We are going to distill over 2,000 years of extreme historical highs and devastating lows into a single cohesive journey. We're looking at Cambodia, a nation that has experienced an unparalleled spectrum of human achievement as well as profound tragedy.
So I want you to keep this one massive question in the back of your mind as we go through this today. How exactly does a nation rebuild after practically losing its entire history? This question is going to anchor our whole exploration of Cambodia's remarkable resilience in its ongoing quest to reclaim its identity. All right, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We've got 1. The Great Khmer Empire. 2. French colonization and war. 3. The Khmer Rouge tragedy. 4. Devastation and hidden dangers. And 5. Rebuilding modern Cambodia.
Part 1. The Great Khmer Empire.
You know, to really grasp this historical peak, we've got to look at the foundation. It all starts way back in the 2nd century with the Funan Kingdom, which completely thrived on international trade and the crucial development of rice cultivation. This eventually evolved into the 6th century Chenla Kingdom, which expanded agricultural state technology all across the Mekong Basin. Finally, all this agricultural tech and trade culminated in the 9th century when King Jayavarman II established the mighty Khmer Empire, laying the groundwork for the magnificent capital of Angkor. By the 12th century, Angkor was home to an estimated 1 million people. I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. In the pre-industrial world, this was literally one of the most massive, prosperous urban centers on Earth. The sheer scale of their engineering was just unfathomable. They didn't just build temples, they transformed the actual landscape with massive reservoirs called barais, creating a giant rice-producing engine. They pioneered monumental stone architecture, mastering a technique called corbelling to build these towering structures. They connected to the Ocean Silk Road, trading heavily with South India and China. And of course, this era saw the construction of Angkor Wat by King Suryavarman II. It's a religious masterpiece representing Mount Meru, and it still stands today as a stunning testament to their golden age. Part 2, French colonization and war. Now, jumping ahead a bit, the colonial era brought this fascinating but incredibly harsh dual reality. On one hand, the French promised and actually did build modern infrastructure. We're talking railways connecting Phnom Penh to the coast, hospitals, and new roads. But the reality for the average Cambodian was quite different. Peasant wealth was heavily extracted through massive taxes and compulsory labor. In fact, 239 Cambodians were even drafted to fight in France during the First World War. Ultimately, the rural population bore the brunt of funding and administration that largely served foreign interests. So the colonial era eventually ended, but the geopolitical turmoil was far from over. By the early 1970s, the conflict in neighboring Vietnam spilled violently right over the border. Cambodia became subject to indiscriminate aerial bombardments. And when the U.S. rapidly withdrew its forces and air support in 1973, it created a massive destabilizing effect and a massive power vacuum within the country. This chaos, unfortunately, set the stage perfectly for radical, opportunistic factions to seize control. Part 3. The Khmer Rouge tragedy. We really have to approach this next phase with a heavy heart. The contrast here is just staggering. Before April 1975, Phnom Penh was a bustling capital city, swollen with refugees to a population of roughly 2.5 million. But immediately upon taking power, Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge implemented a totalitarian evacuation. Within days, the city was entirely emptied out. The entire population was forced to march into the countryside to engage in hard agrarian labor, marking the beginning of a truly brutal regime. The Khmer Rouge were completely obsessed with remaking the country through extreme social engineering. They literally declared it year zero, attempting to wipe out all history that came before them. They abolished currency, markets, and social classes. They strictly banned religion, formal education, and absolutely any trace of Western influence. Citizens were reduced to working 13-hour days on collective farms, with entirely inadequate food, facing execution for the slightest non-compliance. The human cost of these policies was catastrophic. We're talking between 1.5 and 2 million Cambodians who lost their lives. That represents roughly 20 to 25%, a full quarter, of the nation's entire population, gone in under 4 years, due to execution, forced labor, starvation, and disease. Part 4. Devastation and hidden dangers. 644. That is the estimated area of Cambodian land, in square kilometers, left heavily contaminated by hidden landmines and unexploded ordnance. Decades of civil war and aerial bombardments left the country one of the most heavily mined nations on Earth, turning the simple act of farming or even just going for a walk into a potentially lethal risk. Now, while it's definitely encouraging to see overall casualties drop from over 1,700 in 1998 to about 1,000 in 1999 as the fighting subsided, there is a truly tragic shift hidden in these percentages. The proportion of accidents involving children actually began rising from 16% up toward 30%. Because adults were learning the dangers and where to walk, the unexploded ordnance was disproportionately impacting a new, completely unaware generation.
Part 5. Rebuilding Modern Cambodia.
So, how does a nation actually pull itself out of a valley this dark? Well, it takes massive, methodical steps from both the international community and the locals. It started diplomatically with the 1991 Paris Peace Accords. That paved the way for the 1993 UN TAC elections, which was a huge effort involving 22,000 United Nations personnel just to establish democracy. From there, local and international NGOs began the painstaking, dangerous work of clearing those 644 square kilometers of landmines. And crucially, right alongside that physical safety, we see the revival of ancient cultural traditions. And the microcosm of silk weaving brilliantly illustrates this cultural mending. The Khmer Rouge intentionally targeted traditions exactly like this for destruction. So the revival of silk weaving, a practice deeply tied to agricultural rites and festivals for over 1,000 years, is about so much more than just economics. Its restoration serves as a vital vehicle for rehabilitating shattered rural social structures, empowering women, and breathing life right back into the Cambodian cultural identity. But what truly defines modern Cambodia today is a really unique demographic reality. Right now, a staggering 70% of the population is under 30 years old. This creates a profound generation gap. You have a youthful, globally connected majority living right alongside a much smaller population of elders who carry the deep, direct traumas of the Pol Pot era. Navigating this divide between a generation that survived the absolute horrors and a generation looking eagerly toward the future is for sure one of the country's greatest modern challenges. I want to wrap things up with this incredibly powerful reflection from our source. Cambodia has the last standing Angkorian ruins blended with whispers of rural Khmer life and traditions. A gem of a country slowly stepping out of the shadow of a tragic history. It really shows us that clearing mines and weaving silk isn't just about survival or economics. Protecting your heritage is the absolute ultimate triumph over those who try to erase you. Which leaves us with one final question. If you are tasked with rebuilding a nation from scratch, where would you even begin? With the soil beneath your feet or the culture in your heart?